Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, once again, friends, Just the News' John Solomon drops a new bombshell report, not necessarily proving, but definitely alluding to the fact, what seemed very obvious since the start, that Joe Biden and the Biden administration was behind the FBI and the DOJ's raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago private residence. They've stated multiple times on the record that, well, Joe Biden actually had no idea. He was just as shocked or surprised as anyone else. They've claimed no knowledge and no participation, but it turns out that's one massive lie, because they took the initial action a couple months ago that essentially enabled this probe in the first place, enabled the grand jury, and stripped Donald Trump of his executive privilege. In other words, it seems as though the Biden administration totally lied, certainly not surprising, and it seems as though Joe Biden really is weaponizing federal bureaus and federal agencies to go after his clear political opponent. The DNC and Biden corruption never ceases to amaze and never ends. From the unmasking of Flynn and the leaking of the Steele dossier in 2017 to various media outlets, now fast forward 6 years later to this, the corruption never ends, the witch hunt never ends, and it's the same damn people behind the curtain once again. Let me show you guys the new reports. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's John Solomon from Just the News, laying down the context.
We have new evidence. Just the News has obtained correspondence between various parties during the lead up to the raid showing that the Biden White House, that's right, Joe Biden's White House, the one that said they had nothing to do with this, they were deeply involved in the early instigation of the criminal probe against President Trump, including clearing the way for the President Trump's claim of executive privilege to be eviscerated, basically getting rid of his executive privilege before he could contest it. That occurred just before a grand jury started delivering subpoenas looking for the records. So for the first time, we now have evidence that Joe Biden's White House was in the middle of this right from the start, way before the Mar-a-Lago raid, even before a grand jury delivered a subpoena to the president in May of this year.
And here's the article that follows. Biden White House facilitated DOJ's criminal probe against Donald Trump. Scuttled privilege claims memos. Long before it professed no prior knowledge of the raid on Donald Trump's estate, the Biden White House worked directly with the Justice Department and National Archives to instigate the criminal probe into alleged mishandling of documents, allowing the FBI to review evidence retrieved from Mar-a-Lago this spring and eliminating the 45th president's claim to executive privilege, according to contemporaneous government documents reviewed by Just the News. The memos show then White House Deputy Counsel Jonathan Su was engaged in conversations with the FBI and the DOJ and National Archives as early as April, shortly after 15 boxes of classified and other materials were voluntarily returned to the Federal Historical Agency from Trump's Florida home. By May, Su conveyed to the archives that President Joe Biden would not object to waiving his predecessor's claims to executive privilege, a decision that opened the door for the DOJ to get a grand jury to issue a subpoena, compelling Trump to turn over any remaining materials he possessed from his presidency. The machinations are summarized in several memos and emails exchanged between the various agencies in spring 2022, months before the FBI took the added unprecedented step of raiding Trump's Florida compound with a court-issued search warrant. The mostly complete summary was contained in a lengthy letter dated May 10th that acting National Archivist Deborah Steidel-Wall sent Trump's lawyers summarizing the White House's involvement. On April 11, 2022, the White House counsel's office, affirming a request from the Department of Justice, supported an FBI letterhead memorandum, formally transmitted a request that NARA, the National Archives and Records Administration, provide the FBI access to the 15 boxes for its review within 7 days, with the possibility that the FBI might request copies of specific documents following its reviews of the boxes, Wall wrote Trump defense attorney Evan Corcoran. And so right there, folks, it continues to highlight who is being deceptive and who is lying and who is being honest. This essentially proves two things. It shows that the Biden White House continues to act in secrecy with their deceptive tactics and lack of transparency. So much for Jen Psaki's claim the moment Joe Biden got elected that this administration would be the most transparent in American history. They continue to act in secrecy behind closed doors, and they continue to mislead and lie to the public. We had no involvement and no knowledge privilege of the FBI's investigation and their actions in pursuit of a search warrant and a raid on Donald Trump's home. That's their stance currently, but clearly that's not true at all. In fact, Joe Biden's White House was working with NARA, the DOJ, and the FBI all the way back in April and probably even before that, coordinating this entire thing. Absolute liars, deceptive, corrupt clowns. And it also proves another thing, and that's that Donald Trump has been honest from the start, that he was in fact in communications and in contact with them and cooperating with them, sending them 15 boxes, and yet they chose to raid his home anyways. And it all stems directly from Joe Biden, who chose to waive Donald Trump's executive privilege. I mean, we're talking about unprecedented stuff, folks. And it also shows another thing. I mean, the claim is that Donald Trump was holding very important classified documents. Many people are pushing this totally uncorroborated narrative that Donald Trump has been holding nuclear secrets by his bedside. I mean, completely ridiculous. But if that was the case, then why is it that they were working towards this thing back in April 2022 and in May as well, and they only decided to raid Donald Trump's home in August? I mean, if Donald Trump was a traitor to the nation who had his executive privilege waived long ago, and it was of such importance in terms of national security, such a serious crime that they allege from Donald Trump, why did they wait right before the midterm election to do something about it? It stinks to the high heavens, folks, and now it's even stinkier knowing that Joe Biden is behind the whole thing. Of course, not exactly surprising, but this is pretty much confirmation. And the slow nature of it all, to me personally, proves that the raid on Donald Trump's home was never justified. A clear overstep. You know, Donald Trump got impeached for supposedly, or rather for the inaccurate accusation that he was blackmailing the Ukrainian government by withholding aid in the pursuit of launching an investigation or getting dirt on his perceived political opponent at the time, Joe Biden. Joe Biden, by the way, at the time, hadn't even declared that he was running for president, and also Donald Trump never threatened to withhold aid, trying to strong-arm the Ukrainians into investigating Joe Biden at all. I mean, we read the transcript, but anyways, supposedly that was a high crime or misdemeanor and it was an impeachable offense. Meanwhile, you have Joe Biden clearly sicking the DOJ and the FBI on Donald Trump, his actual political opponent, the leader of the Republican Party, and nobody even bats an eye. Now they've raided his home and basically it's been radio silence for the last week or so, but supposedly we're supposed to believe that it was urgent enough for them to raid his home in the first place, even though absolutely nothing has materialized off of the raid. And really, just think about it. Joe Biden behind the scenes weaponizing federal agencies to go after his political opponent, then totally lying about it and misleading the American public, and then the DOJ fighting in court to keep the affidavit sealed, which we just received more information in that case. Judge formally rejects DOJ argument to keep Trump raid affidavit sealed, weaponizing federal agencies, lying about it, and then trying to seal or trying to hide the truth or the affidavit, the motive behind the raid in the first place. Does that seem totally up to standard to you, or does that seem like something you'd expect from an authoritarian Soviet government, or the term that keeps bouncing around, a banana republic? The answer is very clear, folks. I don't have to say another word. I'll put it this way though. Dan Crenshaw Rips Raid asks if people really believe that Donald Trump is reading nuclear secrets at his bedside. If even Dan Crenshaw is calling the raid ridiculous, then you really know that the Biden administration and the DOJ seriously overstepped on this one. And it might have not only been a political overstep, it might be a legal overstep as well, as now Democrat famed lawyer and legal scholar Alan Dershowitz is saying that the Biden White House should not be able to waive executive privilege of Donald Trump.
Well, these are very, very serious matters. The whole issue of whether or not there was full disclosure to the magistrate, hopefully will come out when we see the affidavit. There should be a special master appointed. This has happened in the past. A special master, a former judge, can go through all the papers and decide what's privileged. The one thing that clearly is wrong is the Biden White House should not be able to waive the executive privilege of President Trump. That would make the executive privilege a nullity. It would mean that no president can ever speak to anybody in confidence without knowing that 2 years from now or 3 years from now, all of it will be revealed by the current president. That's just not the way executive privilege was supposed to operate. So there are lots and lots of questions. I hope they'll be answered by the affidavit.
Now we have information that Donald Trump is suing after the FBI raided his home, and I think Donald Trump's argument or his defense is going to revolve around two specific concepts: executive privilege and the fact that he, as president, had the unilateral authority to declassify any documents that he pleased. We've seen the presidential memoranda confirming that he did, in fact, declassify the documents that he took with him. The DOJ and the Biden administration are probably going to argue that, well, they waived his executive privilege and he doesn't actually have the right to declassify documents. They are wrong. They're wrong ethically, they're wrong morally, and it seems as though they're also wrong legally. And it really shows you at the end of the day who the real liars are here, who the real corrupt authoritarians are. Like I keep saying, folks, everything they fearmongered about Donald Trump over the last 6 years, all the names and all the labels that they tried to stick to Donald Trump, has always been more true about them than it ever has been about Donald Trump or anyone else. Another despicable overreach in the endless witch hunt and weaponization of federal institutions. And behind the curtain, at the back end of it, it always seems like it stems from a couple people, from Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, and it seems as though absolutely nothing has changed. We don't call it the Biden crime family without good reason, do we? But that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you're up for joining the community. I'm gonna get back to work like usual though, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.